This is a video to discuss how to alter an already made mask into the ability to use 8-inch zip ties to create a little cage inside the mask to hold it away from your face. So this mask right now has two pieces of fabric that aren't tacked to each other. One thing you can do immediately to make it less suffocating is to tack. Just do little stitches in one spot and about a third of the way and a third of the way. If you want to do anything at all, that will help. Just put a couple stitches with a needle and thread, and that'll keep those two pieces from being sucked away from each other. But I think this other option is even better. So we're gonna take away some of the stitches. I have a couple of tools here that can do this. You're gonna need pointy edges to be able to get down in there. So here's some different options of ways to get into those tiny little stitches. I don't know whether this will work or not. It's a cuticle cutter, but I was trying to think of things people would have around the house that might work. This isn't gonna work, they're too big. You're gonna end up cutting the fabric itself. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm considering that I'm gonna be putting one of these zip ties up a vertical ridge from the base up to the top of the nose. So I also want to create a trough or a pocket to go from the left and right to make an overlapping dome for the mask. So I have to consider the fact that this piece needs to go all the way through and this piece needs to go all the way through. So the stitches will end up making this section being cut off. So it'll be like a triangle-ish shape from the corner to down to the base, and then a corner up to the nose. Same thing from the nose down to here, and from here down to the chin, so that there will be a trough for these things to go through. So I'm going to need to cut a little space here and some stitches in here and some stitches here. So when you pull the fabric apart at the seam, you can see these two little tiny stitches. So you can take whatever, let's try and see if this works. There's also seam rippers that you can use, but there, that worked well. So you just need to get a couple of these stitches loose. Loose enough that we can stick this rib right up to the top. That's perfect. You don't need to do too many stitches there. We're going to do the same thing over here. So pull those two pieces of fabric apart from each other. You can just pull and the other ones will come apart. So that's what you need there. You do the same on this side. There you go. Now this is the nose and this is the chin. I find that my ideal space from the nose to the chin is usually about a third of the way down. So that way where the crossover happens is between the end of your nose and the top of your lip. So I'm just going to guesstimate that. So that's 1, 2, 3, about. And it's okay if it's lower, if it's in front of your mouth instead, that's fine too. So I'm going to pin that, and now I'm going to sew from the edge to across to the middle, and not all the way to the seam in the middle, but along the edge and then up to the top. I'm going to leave these white thread, because then you can see what I'm doing as far as where I'm sewing. If I were to put blue, a navy blue thread across the top, then you wouldn't be able to see where I sewed. But you're welcome to make it match so that it doesn't appear as in your face. Since this will be very in your face, it'll be very white on the fabric, blue fabric, but then you'll be able to see better. So here's my little cut. And on most electric sewing machines, you're going to have the ability to go backwards. So you can go forward, and then there's a little button or lever that you press, and it'll show this U-turn. And it'll make the machine, when you step on the pedal, go backwards, and then you release the lever and it will go forwards again. I can't do that. I actually my treadle machine only goes in one direction. So for me to do that, I have to go over it this way. But you can use your other. Okay, so now I'm aiming toward the pin that I marked earlier. Third of the way down. I'm going to take out my pin, and I'm close to the seam. I'm going to pivot and go up toward the nose. And then I can do the same thing that I did on the other side. So you can do the back button. I'm not sure what it's called, the reverse lever, just so that, whoops, to get over the bump. Come on. There we go. So that should do it. So now you can see this is going to be a trough, and this is going to be a trough. So the next place I'm going to start is here, and I'm going to sew across and down to the chin. So the width of this trough here, this gap, depends upon whether you're going to sew it in or not. This particular zip tie, 8-inch zip tie, this you could probably even do a longer one. It doesn't seem to matter if it's close, it still goes against your face. So you can either cut off this end, or I'm going to make it wide enough that you can just sit it inside. So I'm going to make it parallel to this line. And then go down to the chin. And needle all the way up to the top. So now here's your side trough. I forgot to do I'll have to tie this and knot it. So you can slide your horizontal all the way across. And I might not have made it big enough to actually fit inside. But if I remember and do that on the other side, it can go on the other side. But this might actually be 11 or more. So if you've got a zip tie that's longer, you can do that as well. So now we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side.
to line up. I'm going to aim to the same place that I came on the opposite side. So this is where the pin was. Took the pin out, but I'm aiming for the same place because I'm going to come across enough.
So now I have one more, starting from here, going across to line up with this X, and then down. So it makes a plus sign. It will end up making a plus sign.
Again, the same parallel.
Okay, so now I can put one of the zip ties up through the center to the nose. And then I can see that I need to clip it. And this one I usually just sew in because it's easy to wash with it in, no problem. And then this side, hopefully I made it wide enough this time. We'll take and go through over the top of the middle. And sometimes it's a little bit tricky because you've got a seam that you've got to make it over. So there's a fold of fabric in there. So you have to play around with getting it through beyond that. So over the bottom zip tie. And then hopefully this one will fit inside. If not, I can just clip it off and then it'll still provide that crossover. But you might want to try the longer one. I'm going to cut it off and see what happens. So when I sew this one in, it'll have a little bit extra pressure, so it'll stay bowed away from the face, and then the side ones provide resistance against the face from this section by your nose collapsing as you breathe. And I guess I didn't really make it a third of the way down, did I? Looks more like a little higher than halfway, but it should still be fine. Now, if you want to replace these with over the head or put in different ear straps, this particular one, the complaint is it's too tight. So you can do the same thing. You pull apart the sides and you can see those stitches. So if I just snip a couple of those stitches, I'll be able to pull out this elastic. And this elastic is a strong elastic. It still can work if you have it the right length for the person, so it's not pulling on your ears. So I wouldn't throw this away, even if if it doesn't personally fit for you. Like if you have kids or if you have other people who have kids, they don't need a lot of elastic. They just need to be fitted. And the problem with these masks that you purchase is that they're supposed to be one size fits all, but nobody's face is the same as anybody else's face size-wise, and kids grow. So yes, you can even use ribbon, or some other way of getting, but the problem is that it's got to be exactly the right length from the length of the mask to the back of the ear without it pulling. So definitely not going to throw this elastic away. You can also save other mask elastic. So I've been using, so this is a dust mask that I have found a bunch that were in the garage for dust. You can just pull, this is an over the head elastic. You can just pull this and use it. I mean, whether you've used the mask or not, like even the disposable paper masks, you can save the ears elastic. But this will be perfect, potentially perfect. You'll have to measure it to see, but if I attach this here and attach this here, you still may have to hand stitch it or change the tightness. You can add a knot if it's too, yeah, so you can just, if the elastic is too long, you can just shorten it by putting a knot in it. And that might make it too much shorter, but then you can make it, or if it's not short enough, you can make the knot bigger and bigger. So if you just do this to an elastic that's too short, too long, you can make it shorter by making the knot or moving the knot. So if there is a knot already in the mask, you can just adjust the length that way. So the person who made this mask did a really good job with the ear elastics reinforcing. And since this is a wide elastic, you've got like 4 stitches that go through there. So one of the times through, it got sewn in, and then it also got sewn a second time. So that elastic is not going anywhere. Or some of the elastics come loose because they've only got 1 stitch through them. That can be frustrating. See that back stitch. So this is the one that I pulled out earlier. You'll just need to push all those little hairs. You can pull some of those threads and things out, but just push it in. And then with a needle and thread, or if you want to with the sewing machine, you can go across and up. Just don't cross over where your slot is going to be. But just so that this doesn't come unraveled more, you can hand stitch it or you can machine stitch it back flat. Unless you're going to reuse the ear. If you're going to redo an ear one, then you just put one end in here and then figure out what length you need it to be for the other side, which this one's too short, so you can make it a little bit longer. Some of the elastics, this might be a fine length, it's just that the stretchiness of it, this is very hard to stretch, whereas this elastic is easy to stretch and this elastic is very easy to stretch. So this length right here is somewhat similar. So if I took this piece and I attached it here and then stuck it in the same hole here and stitched that in, this might make the mask as an ear mask completely comfortable because it's more stretchy and it added an extra, let's see, not quite an inch. So it might depending upon the person and what the needs were, you might be able to make that work too. But for kids, they have a smaller need, so this could be reused for a mask that's too big in the loops. So to figure that out, so here's a binder clip that I have. So like, let's say this is too big on your kid's face. So the ear loops, you can just pull the ear loop down and either use a pin. Binder clips like these don't hurt when they touch your face. So you just attach it, put it back on their head and see, so is that the right length? No, that's too tight. Okay, well then fold it to about there. Try that. Okay, that's perfect. All right, so then you know you have two choices. You can take out the seam in here and you can push this back in to this distance, so you can mark with a marker or something that that's where you need the edge to be the right length. Or you can you can stitch it. You can just stitch across here with needle and thread and it'll be a little bump, but who cares? If this is the outside of the mask, the bump will be on the outside. If it's the inside of the mask and they want it the other way, then just flip that on that side, and it won't hurt anything to have that little bump stick out. So if it's too big, that's one way that you can make the ears shorter and test it on. So I wouldn't do just one ear at a time. I would try it again and again. So I would clip this one and then I would take this ear and I would adjust it and clip it, have them try it on again and see if everything's lined up. So this isn't pulling too much, but it's just the right length behind their ears to make sure that the nose, this part of the nose stays at the top, and that they can talk without it falling off. And some finishing details if you don't know. So the one that I did the stitch back and forth on, since I've gone back and forth enough times, it's not likely going to come unraveled because the stitches are going back and forth on themselves. So I can cut this this thread off right next to the fabric. But this one, as I use these stitches will come undone. So I'm just going to do a square knot. So right over left and left over right. And right over left. I don't have to do it twice, but theoretically, if you do a granny knot, I've done some where I wasn't paying attention and then the granny knot came out and just, so then I had to stitch it again. So now this shouldn't tear back at that spot because I've got the knot in there, the square knot. And then the same with the finishing on this side. This one I did a double back stitch a couple times, so I don't even really need to do a square knot with that one, nor with this one because I went back and forth a couple times. This one the same way. Sometimes things like this will happen, and you'll notice it when you put the mask on because there'll be a little tickle by your face, by your nose. So sometimes when you're cutting, the piece will get loose on one end. This one looks like I did it double, so that's fine. Could cut that straight. And then I've got my needle and thread right here. So I'm just going to put a knot. If you double the thread, it's stronger and we're creating resistance. We're trying to push the piece away from the face so that it provides that gap. So if it's too tight and you don't like it, I mean, if it's too bowed and you want it to be more relaxed, you can cut this shorter. You can see how it wants to relax out to here. But I tend to like it pushed. So you can either do it so that this end is tucked under the fold of the fabric, or you can use the thread itself as what's holding it in. If you do the thread itself, you just sew back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth here to provide resistance for there, or you can try to push the zip tie behind the fold. There you go. So now it's the way the fabric is folded on itself. It's being held in place there, and then I just need to reinforce this edge. And I usually do this because it's less, if it touches your face, this is less rough if the piece of plastic isn't peeking out through. This, just that simple back and forth with the needle and thread. And I just happen to have green thread on here from the blanket stitch demonstration. So this mask was designed to be double-sided, and since it doesn't have a nose piece front or back, this will also be double-sided. So I'm putting the needle through the loop that I made to make a little knot a few times in a row. So this is the bowed out version, and right now I have my fingers, I don't know if you can see far enough away. So here and here is where the zip tie ends. So it makes a cup. So this could go an extra inch on either side if you wanted it to be all the way to the edge. You'll have to try it on to see if that works. And you can also make it double-sided, just pop it to the other way, and then this side of the mask can be the outside. Now you may find that you need to swap, depending, it should be fine. So this has the outside rib on the outside, and then the horizontal will pull towards your face because it's not going over the top of this. So you can just thread it so that it goes over this plastic piece, this rib. So this side should be the most away from your face. So this is my sewing in the elastic. So I pushed the elastic into the hole and used something to push it in. And now I'm doing the same thing that I did at the base of the chin. So I'm going back and forth, making sure that I go through the elastic a number of times. And then I also try to make sure that it's not just across the top here, but it also goes down a little bit. So I'm kind of trying to make a little box of stitches, not just a line straight across, so that it can reinforce and go over several of these little elastic bands and hold them in place, because there's multiple pieces of elastic within this one piece. And just enough times that it's firmly in place. And then again, you can go through the loop a few times. So I've attached a head elastic just to the tops of the mask, and so then when you have the mask on, it's pulling to the more toward the top of the head. You can try it on the back, but if you have a ponytail or something like that, that helps it from sliding down your head. And now I'm going to heal these little spots. I'll just do a few stitches here and a few stitches here, and now I've got my reinforced dome shape breathing space altered mask. So I hope that helps somebody or several somebodies.